Marvel train just keeps on chugging, doesn't it? And the next stop is Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania. Hello everyone and welcome back to Classic Comics. This is my review of Marvel's latest film. I'll be giving a spoiler-free review first, then I'll get into spoilers later. I'll let you know when the spoilers are coming. So, we pick up with Ant-Man, aka Scott Lang, after Endgame. He's famous now and he's written a biography, which is a running joke through the movie. His daughter Cassie, who is now, of course, a teenager, lands in jail, and Scott is upset about this. One of the things that bugs me about this movie is how Cassie really treats her father with just complete disrespect throughout the movie. He has literally saved the world and helped resurrect half the population. He's admired by the public, he's famous, and of course, his daughter thinks he's basically a loser. Her attitude is more or less simply, well, you haven't saved the world today, so, what good are you anyway? Cassie and Hank Pym have been working on a system for mapping the quantum realm because, she's a teenage girl in a Marvel movie and we need girls in STEM, so of course she's a super genius and she loves to science. They activate this mapping system and somehow they wind up getting sucked into the quantum realm. How this happens is never really explained, by the way. So we learn that within the quantum realm, there's actually this entirely different universe. Now, they never give it a name, but I think it's supposed to be the microverse, which is an alternate universe you can access by shrinking to subatomic size in the comics. Anyway, as you've seen from the trailer, the big villain is Kang, who's trapped in the quantum realm and wants out. There's a MacGuffin he needs to get out, and he uses Cassie as a hostage to force Scott to help him get it. Bill Murray appears briefly in the movie, and also one of the villains is M.o.d.o.k. Now, the story is fine for the most part. There's plenty of the trademark cheesy Marvel humor, but Ant-Man has often been a humorous character in the comics. I mean, this movie has Paul Rudd and Bill Murray in it, so of course it's goofy. The performances are fine for the most part. The main cast are all likable, except Cassie, who's kind of annoying, especially early on, although she gets a bit better as the movie goes along. Jonathan Major is fine as Kang. Personally, I think they could have gone with a better choice, maybe Mads Mikkelsen or someone like that, but Major does fine in the role. The plot of this movie actually reminds me a lot of Tron Legacy. If you've seen that movie, that'll tell you a lot of what this story is about, because the plots are very similar. This movie isn't as good as No Way Home was, but it is generally better than the other Marvel movies we've gotten recently, although that really doesn't mean much. Okay, so at this point, I'm going to go ahead and get into spoilers. So they go down into the quantum realm, and we learn that while she was in the quantum realm all that time, Janet met Kang, who had crashed there in some kind of a time ship. They work to get his ship working, but the power source is damaged. They spend years working and finally get it operating again. But the time ship operates on Kang's thoughts, and after it's powered up and Janet puts her hand on the ship, she somehow sees into Kang's mind. Don't ask me how, I don't know. And sees that Kang is really a genocidal madman. So she steals the ship's battery, or whatever, and shrinks it down out of sight where Kang can't get to it. Because of that, Kang is still trapped in the quantum realm. Now, after this, Kang conquered the quantum realm and established a kingdom with him as a ruler. A resistance developed, and Janet helped lead it until she was found in Ant-Man 2 and went back to Earth. After she left, Kang crushed the rebellion and now rules with an iron fist and all that. So when they arrive in the quantum realm, Scott and Cassie wind up in one area while Hank, Janet, and Hope are separated from them in another area, and they start trying to find their way back to one another. Janet leads Hank and Hope to this guy named Krylar, played by Bill Murray, who used to lead the resistance with her, but he betrays them to Kang, who sends M.o.d.o.k to catch them. So M.o.d.o.k is actually Darren Cross, the villain from the first film. Now, at the end of the first Ant-Man, he was sent down into the quantum realm. He was found by Kang, who turned him into M.o.d.o.k, which means mechanized organism designed only for killing. Except that Kang sends him to catch them, not kill them, so I guess it should be M.o.d.o.k with a C instead of a K for mechanized organism designed only for capturing or something, maybe? I don't know. Anyway, M.o.d.o.k is played largely for laughs, which really isn't surprising given the way Marvel makes their movies. So M.o.d.o.k attacks them, but they manage to escape and then go looking for Scott and Cassie again. And by the way, I don't even know why Bill Murray is in this movie. He's in one scene basically, and he's on screen for maybe 5 minutes. Scott and Cassie meet a group of rebels who are fighting Kang's regime. Their leader is a female named Gentari or something like that. I don't know. I'm just going to call her Stronk Whammon because that's her character. So Kang's forces arrive and catch Cassie and Scott and take them to Kang. Kang offers Scott a deal. If Scott will shrink down and retrieve the power battery, Kang will let Scott and Cassie go. Scott shrinks down to get the battery, and while he's doing that, Janet, Hank, and Hope arrive. Scott and Hope manage to get the battery, then a fight ensues, and Janet is captured by Kang's forces, while Scott, Hank, and Hope manage to get away. But then their ship crashes, and they all wind up getting separated. Cassie escapes from her cell at this point, and then she frees Strong Whammon from her cell. And this is where the feminism really starts getting out of hand. Even though she's a 16-year-old girl, Cassie takes on about 4 or 5 armed guards and beats them all single-handedly. She then frees Strong Whammon, who beats up another guard. And of course, Cassie just can't help but admire and say, "Wow, you're so cool." It's classic Marvel, female validates other female for no particular reason. They then go to a communications center and they broadcast a message urging the rebels to attack Kang's Tower right now because now's the perfect time to attack. Because he's vulnerable or something? How is he vulnerable? I don't know. Because his forces are all right there ready, waiting to fight. It doesn't make any sense. But she sends out the signal anyway. Then Scott becomes a giant, or at least a giant in the quantum realm, and he and Hope attack, trying to stop Kang and save Janet and Cassie. Then the rebels arrive and a big battle ensues. Scott manages to damage Kang's time ship so he can't leave. Then Kang comes out of his tower to attack the rebels directly. Then M.o.d.o.k attacks Cassie and she defeats him single-handedly, of course. And then there's this dialogue between them that's just awful. M.o.d.o.k is laying there kind of bloody and beaten. And he says, what do I do? What am I supposed to do? And Cassie says, "Don't be a dick." And M.o.d.o.k says, but I am a dick. And Cassie says, "Well, try not being a dick." And then he says, it's too late. It's too late for me." And Cassie says, "It's never too late to stop being a dick." And somehow this inspires M.o.d.o.k to turn against Kang. And he attacks Kang and then Kang kills him. His death scene is played as a joke, of course. Then Hank arrives. Now, early in the movie, we're told that Hank has been doing some sort of research with ants, having them perform scientific research somehow. The ant colony that he's using for this experiment gets pulled down into the quantum realm along with him. Hank shows up with a bunch of ants. And of course, these ants are, they're not ant sized in relation to people. In relation to the people, they're giant. They're like the size of a horse or something. Hank tells us that these ants landed in an area of the quantum realm where time flows differently. So even though they've only been in the quantum realm for about a day in their terms, the ants have actually been down there for about 1,000 years. And in this time, they developed a Class II technocratic civilization, as Hank terms it. And then also, Hank informs us that they've created a socialist utopia. Yeah, sure, whatever. So a massive swarm of these ants attacks Kang's forces, and they manage to overwhelm Kang and his army largely just through sheer numbers. They then use the power battery to create a portal back home to Earth, and they all go through it except Scott, who is attacked by Kang before he can leave. They have a fight, and then, of course, Hope comes back and defeats Kang for Scott, because, the hero can't defeat the villain himself. Kang is then absorbed by his power battery or something like that. I don't even know. Then at the end, we pick up with Scott and his family back on Earth, and they throw a birthday party for Cassie, and the movie ends. So, what can I say about Quantumania? I would say it's actually probably the best post-Endgame Marvel movie except for No Way Home, for whatever that's worth. But it's really more a matter of this film just not being as bad as those other films rather than this film being particularly good. It contains all the same tired tropes we've come to expect in a Marvel movie. The male hero lead is a buffoon and is relegated to being basically a supporting character in his own film. Check. The female characters are all generally portrayed as being more capable, tougher, stronger, smarter, and more heroic than the male characters. Check. The movie is filled with lame humor that undercuts any attempts at this thing being taken seriously, making the whole film feel very slight and almost kind of pointless. Check. A ton of CGI that just gets mind numbing after a while. Check. And this film is largely just a setup for other films that are coming down the line. Check. It's just more of the same from Marvel, really, and it's getting tiresome. It's not just that this film is disappointing, it's that these Marvel films are always disappointing in exactly the same ways. These films never take their characters very seriously, so it's difficult for me to care, and I love this stuff. But it's mostly just become kind of boring at this point. So I guess on a scale of 1 to 5, I'll give this movie 2.5 M.o.d.o.ks, I guess. I don't know. Now, I guess I should talk about the after credit scenes. So, in the mid credit scene, we see other versions of Kang. Now, in the comics, Kang becomes the ruler of Earth in the 40th century. He's the absolute ruler, and there's really no one there to challenge him, so he comes back in time to the present to fight the Avengers because basically it amuses him. Now, in the comics, he eventually grows so bored with ruling in the 40th century that Kang travels back in time to ancient Egypt, and he rules ancient Egypt under the name Rama-tut. At some point after that, he grows tired of ruling ancient Egypt, so then he leaves Earth and goes into another dimension called Limbo, which exists outside of normal time and space, where he becomes another character named Immortus. So in the mid-credits sequence, we see Immortus and Rama-tut and a third version of Kang, which I didn't recognize. Anyway, they discuss the death of the Kang in this movie, and then Immortus says that he's called all the others. One of them says, how many of them? And Immortus says, all of them. And then the camera pans, and you see this massive chamber, kind of like the Senate chamber, in the Star Wars prequels. And it's filled with Kangs, like hundreds, maybe thousands of them. And then the scene ends there. Then we get the after credit scene. And in the after credit scene, we see Jonathan Major again. He's, I guess, supposed to be some version of Kang, but this seems to be set in the late 1800s or something like that. He's in a theater and he's up on stage giving some kind of presentation to a crowd. And he's talking about time and how it affects our lives or something like that. Then they cut to the audience and we see Loki. And he says, that's him. And then the camera cuts to Mobius, played by Owen Wilson. And he says, you make it out like he's some big villain or something. And Loki says, he is. And it ends there. So I guess this is going to pick up in season 2 of that Loki show, which I don't plan on watching. Anyway, let me know what you thought of Ant-Man in the comments. Did you like or dislike the movie? Do you agree or disagree with my review? And please sub to the channel and hit the bell for notifications, and I will see you all next time. Thanks for watching.